So I see I see a new face, and I know that there's a guy, Frank, said he'd be right back. So Jeff, who's new to us? Who are you?
Well, my name is Jeff Mazur. I'm surprised to see so many Timex Sinclair enthusiasts. I'm actually quite a retro computing guy, mostly in the Apple II world. But perhaps, I don't know if any of you have read my book.
I was thinking you might be that Jeff Mazur. Wow.
That would be me. So, and I will tell you, I haven't thought about the Timex Sinclair since, when was this, 1980? Let's see.
Or?
Well, let's see. The second printing was 1985. So we'll say 1984. Yeah.
Wow.
1984.
Wow.
So, and I saw the anniversary, I guess, of the 2068 coming up, and it prompted me to see if there was any interest, anybody out there, and came across your group. So thought, wow, tomorrow is, I did this yesterday, and lo and behold, it said there was a meeting tomorrow. So here I am.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So does everybody here know who Jeff is and are familiar with this book?
I've got the book.
There weren't too many out there.
Really? Because it seems like there's a lot of copies floating around.
There weren't too many books written about the 2060.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They, in fact, this book almost didn't. I had written it, was being edited just as Timex decided to exit the computer business. So my good friend Fred Bleckman, who wrote the beginning advanced version of the book, his was already out, and they were actually debating whether to publish this because they thought, well, you know, and look, I was sitting there thinking, just like the 1000 that sold how many millions of computers, and I was looking forward to a lot of sales of the book, but just as it like I said, came out was when Timex decided, well, we're going to get out of this business. But
well, personally, I have lots of questions for you, but let me put those on hold because I want to find out who Frank is, who's also new to us.
Hi, Frank Mora. I bought a ZX81 back in 1982, and became very enamored with the Z80 processor that was inside it, and it actually started my computer career that's gone on for the last 40 years. So I started doing assembly language programming on the Z80 to start with. Found Z81, found it to be small, but was fascinated by being able to write directly into the display buffer. And so I did, after about 6 to 8 months, I love the computer. I did get I think a 8K extension pack on the back, or the biggest one that they could get. But the cassettes were just a little bit too much for me. So I then bought an Apple II Plus and put a CPM card and an 80 column card in it, and started doing my professional Z80 assembly language programming there for the next 3 or 4 years. Graduated to C programming, and the rest is history.
We've got another C programming fan, at least one other C programmer with us today.
I loved C. I programmed it for about 9 years professionally and really enjoyed it a lot. Yeah.
Cool. Larry and David, are y'all new? Because I don't know all I see is your first names. I'm going to ask Larry to, Larry's unmuted. Larry, are you there? How about David? Okay.
Right, okay. Now you can hear me. You still can't hear me.
Oh, wait, is this David? We can hear you.
Okay, you can hear me. I can
Yes.
hear you. That's good. I go back to computers when they had pins and drums. If anybody needs some 12AX7s that have UNIVAC written on them, I have a whole bunch. And let's see. I just found my Sinclair computer. I've been using my programmable Sinclair calculator. How's that go back? Since they came out, I had them specially imported because they weren't for sale in the United States. But anyway, I just found my Sinclair computer and I don't know what to do with it at this point. So I'm not even sure it works, and I've got to rig up the power supply for it. So I thought I would get some ideas as to what I could do. I've done wonderful things with Commodore VIC-20s and using it as a terminal into an HP 3000 to take computer courses. And so I have a lot of fun with this sort of thing. So let's see, what do you got for me? And David Anderson, what is that behind you? I've never seen it.
That is a drawing of the 2068 that a fellow in, what's it, Brazil or Argentina drew. And I spotted it one day on Twitter and asked him if I could use it, and he was thrilled, and we're both thrilled.
Well, I have never seen one of those.
Oh, you really?
And
Oh, this.
I do a lot of estate sales and garage sales and whatnot. It's amazing you can find old cables and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
That's where I found my Sinclair computer some years ago. And since I haven't had a chance to do anything with it, but I have never seen one of those things. So I guess it's a later version of the Sinclair.
Yeah, it was color. It had 48K of RAM. It had a larger ROM than the ZX, the 1000 or ZX81, depending on which one you had. It had sound. It had joystick ports. You could, with an adapter cartridge, you could run software for its sort of parent unit, the Sinclair Spectrum, which is 40 years old this weekend. So yeah, it came out in late 1983. It finally hit the market in late 1983. And as Jeff was saying earlier, Timex Computer Corporation decided to get out of the market in February of 1984. So it was on the market for roughly 6 months, and then they said adios.
Oh boy. Anybody have any idea how I turn my camera on?
I'm sorry?
I can't turn my camera on. I can't find where to do it.
Oh, that should be in the settings somewhere in either in your computer or in Zoom.
Well, I'm not finding it. Okay.
Actually, it looks like your camera might be on, just something's blocking it, maybe?
You got one of those
Oh, wait a minute.
camera sliders that
Let's see. Stop video. Nope, that doesn't.
Now it's off.
And now it's off. We can tell the difference.
Back on. Now it's off.
yeah.
Click on the camera. Okay, I clicked on the camera.
So we
Yeah.
think it comes on just as something's blocking the camera.
You know where the camera is on your computer?
Yeah.
Is there something over it? A slider or maybe a post-it or?
Okay. Well, for right now, we'll worry about it later.
Oh.
So like that
Oh, we want to see you.
I do.
So Jeff Mazur, let's talk.
Sure.
So you're not wearing a tie anymore.
No, did I have a tie? Yes, I did. Wow.
You did.
Look at that picture. Oh
You
my
were
God.
an amateur radio operator and a photographer, and you wrote for Soft Talk, and you worked as a videotape engineer.
Yeah, let's talk about my 3 hobbies. Photography. Okay. That was, I had a dark room. I took pictures, developed film. That all went away with 1 hour photo and digital cameras.
Indeed.
So then I had ham radio as a kid, talking around the world, getting on the radio, making, we had a thing called phone patch where we could actually
yeah.
have people talk to each other, because long distance calling was expensive.
Mhm.
Now, then I got into handy talkies, and we had repeaters, and now you got a cell phone. Back in ham radio, you had to wait till the right time of day and the right cycle of the sunspots. And, if you're lucky, you maybe could get through and you might understand what they're saying. And now you get on a cell phone and it's a free call anywhere in the world with video, and it's a perfect, call. So another hobby that has absolutely no use anymore.
Right.
And now I'm into retro computing, and I am designing boards to go in Apple IIs to this day.
Oh, really?
Surface mount components, and it's like, why?
Well-
So my three hobbies are basically all obsolete and anachronistic, but I still love having fun doing it. So I'm retired. But a real quick, just if I may, I mean, I did get started like a lot of you guys probably, in the early days were all about, I'm thinking close to the same age.
Yeah.
And I started with S100 computers, very early, got into the Apple II stuff, was designing boards for them as well. I did do a product for the Timex 1000. What was that? That was the Sinclair ZX
81.
81.
Well, it was the 80 and then the 81.
Yeah. So I thought, again, another $1 million project of a small little cartridge that would plug on the back of the computer. I mean, it was a $50 computer. I used to see them in the grocery stores. So they sold you get shitload of those things. And I thought, what was the number one complaint was the keyboard. You couldn't really tell. So I had no sound. I thought, wait, the Apple's got a really simple sound circuit. Anyway, I built this little board that could plug in the back, and immediately, as soon as you plugged it in, you had a key click whenever you touched the keyboard. So it was a little bit of feedback that you actually hit the key, and then it was addressable just like the speaker in the Apple II. So by that time, people were playing polyphonic music on the Apple IIs. You had speech, somewhat synthesizers, 1-bit speech. I mean, there's a lot going on in the Apple II world with sound.
There was.
With every game, you had a sound. So this was a board, maybe $3 worth of parts that I tried to even get Timex to sell. For $20, you could plug it on the back. You could have sound. You could have all kinds of people programming for it. I thought it was a slam dunk, and but again, it was either by that time the 81s were kind of being phased out, and I don't know who would have been interested in doing it. Just like I would say nowadays, who would be interested in doing it? But again, I'm never disappointed in the Apple II community with all the stuff that's being done for people that are still using these things. So if anybody ever wants to make a sound card for their ZX81, I'll be happy to supply the schematic. It's pretty simple, but it was actually kind of cool. And I still think if anyone was using these today, they'd want one. So that's kind of a brief history of, and again, it did get me into computers at an early age, and I've been playing with them ever since. Although my career was in television, I ended up, certainly the last 20 years, mostly essentially programming, stuff for the different departments and speeding up workflows. I mean, I was an executive director of technology when I finally retired, but some of my best years were actually towards the end, just doing stuff with computers. So that's my history. Do I have a blog or website? No. I have a LinkedIn page, but that ain't going to tell you anything.
So, did you sell the sound thing to anybody, either directly or to a company that made it?
No, it was. I have the only prototype, and like I said, I did try to shop it around at the time. I was working, for ABC basically for over 40 years, and all this stuff was done on the side. So it was all a side hustle for me. So I designed boards for the Apple II that I licensed to other people, you know, to sell for me, because I didn't want to get really too involved. I did the first boards I did manufacture myself and sold through my company, which was West Side Electronics. If anybody was in the early Apple II days, they might recognize it. But then I, again, just thought it'd be easier to just, you know, sell the rights and let's, you know, get some royalties. Again, wasn't getting rich off any of this stuff back then. Certainly I'm not getting rich off any of this stuff now, but we do it for fun.
So what are some of the boards that you're designing now for the Apple II?
Well, you asked for a website. I do have, here's another interesting story. I guess I've been very active in the Apple II world. There's a site called Apple Fritter that a lot of people go to, and, you know, I'm a member there. And about almost 2 years ago, a guy came on and said, oh, I got this idea for a ROM replacement board for the Apple IIs. Because if you know, all the machines, the original Apple II had an integer basic and a floating point or AppleSoft. Later machines had different versions of ROM, and people are always trying to figure out ways to, you know, have all the ROMs in their machine and switch between them. And he came up with this idea for a little board with a jumper to switch between the two. And I said, well, you know, with the parts you're using, you could go a lot. We could have a menu come up and you could switch between the different, you know, ROM images and do all kinds of stuff. We eventually added a clock to it. Anyway, I'm working with this guy, talking to him through Apple Fritter. And I said, I'd be happy to help you. I'll write the software. And I think you could make a really cool product out of it. And we had been in touch and chatting back and forth for several months before I finally said, you know, where are you? And he goes, oh, I'm in Australia. And I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. It never occurred to me to, you know, but, you know, nowadays we're all doing stuff online and we have no idea where anybody is or what they look like unless we, you know, do a Zoom call. So anyway, that was, you know, like I said, 1.5 years ago, we eventually did this product. So if you want a website, if you want to see some of the work I've done right now, it is theromexchange.com. It's theromexchange.com. And again, we've done boards now for the Apple II, 2 Plus, 2E, 2C. We just released the 2C Plus version of that. So that's what's happening there.
Sorry,
Everything.
that's really small. Wow. I was trying to load it so I can display it for other folks. So how did you come? You mentioned Fred was somehow, you know, part of you writing this book. You know, talk to us a little bit about how that came about.
Sure. That's also an interesting story. I started writing articles for radio electronics and designed a 10-function digital clock, which well, let's not get into that, but it was partly because of Fred Bleckman. He had written a number of articles for the same magazine talking about digital clocks. He had a biorhythm clock and a circular clock. And anyway, and I came up with what I think Radio Electronics renamed it the ultimate digital clock, because it had displays for time and date and alarm and timer, and they were all on at once, all multiplexed. And I actually mentioned him. I said, you know, in previous articles by Fred Bleckman, you know, about digital clocks, you know, we've seen all these different things, and here is what I think is the ultimate. Well, it turns out, and I was selling boards. I had my my PO box in there. I can't remember exactly how he got in touch with me, but lo and behold, one day I get a phone call from Fred Bleckman. Turns out he lives about 3 blocks away from me. I said, wow, well, we got to get together. He also was an Amway salesman, so the first meeting had a little bit of a glitch to it, but we became very good friends after that. We started a group that met once a month for lunch. And he was a great guy. And he was the one that first, I think, was either contacted by Timex or Sinclair, but he said, hey, you know, there's this new, you know, computer coming out. And I pitched an idea for these books. You know, I'll do a beginner, advanced, or intermediate, and you can do the intermediate advanced. I said, yeah, that sounds cool. So Sinclair sent us each what I would imagine you'd call a prototype of the 2068. It was really a Spectrum with the NTSC version of the chip in there. And we got a lot of advanced information, which ended up in the book, you know, things that I thought everyone that wanted to, you know, certainly program this machine would want to know all the details of the, you know, specific chips that are in there. And so I thought, wow, this is a Bible that, you know, and everyone's going to want. And like I said, you know, I think had the machine continued for even another year, you know, we probably would have, you know, sold a whole lot more of them. But so that was my my introduction, if you would, to the Spectrum. I think somewhere I still have that prototype. I did get a shipping version of the 2068 along with some of the peripherals. They're somewhere in a closet somewhere, but again, not something I would pull out very often to do anything with. So.
Well, but
And
see,
yet I got,
now that you've mentioned it, we're going to have to insist on a show and tell in the future.
one day I'll pull that all out if it would be of interest to anybody.
Oh,
but
yeah, terribly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't necessarily see anything. Most of it is the stuff that was actually shipping. The prototype just looks like a Spectrum, except it just puts out NTSC. So.
Okay, see, right. So there are a few of those out there still floating around.
Yeah.
And do you recall who you might have worked with at Timex?
Well, that too, I would have to probably dig out the draft of the book. You know, there's probably some names in there, and certainly I know who I worked with Sam's, who published the book. But yeah, there were probably some names of people at Timex that we dealt with.
Cool.
If I still got, actually, I'm gonna look real quick. Hold on.
Sure. So, oh, Jeff Burrell, you have your is this your little prototype on your screen?
All right, well, you guys can talk and I will quickly look through some old folders I have on correspondence. Maybe there's something in there. You never know.
Jeff Burrell, are you there? Sort of there. Oh, you're muted, Jeff. Let me see if you can unmute. So while we're waiting for Jeff Mazur, Ingo, do you want to talk about your keyboard? Because you said you had just put up your blog post.
Yeah, sure. I decided that there was enough stuff to put in there that I was going to break it up into two parts, trying to keep my posts under 10-minute reads. So I posted part one this morning, and it covers the layout, designing the layout using this thing called a keyboard layout editor. It's a free web application linked with GitHub, and you can go in there and graphically rearrange the keys and the key sizes and everything to come up with your own custom keyboard layout. And so I use that, and then you can port the JSON from that application. Generates a little JSON file. You can just copy it and then paste it into another program by this guy who goes by Swill KB or Swill. not the most fortunate name, but the guy does have some good stuff up there. And you paste that JSON in and give it a few other settings, and it actually creates either an SVG or a DXF file. It also does encapsulated PostScript EPS, and will actually make a mounting plate for these Cherry MX or Gatoron mechanical switches. And that's what I did. And I took it to my local makerspace, and I used their laser cutter, and I cut it out of a piece of 3mm thick black acrylic. And actually, hang on. Last time I just showed you guys a photograph, and I don't know how this is going to work with my background, but here's the keyboard.
Yeah, that looks really good.
That's
And you can
nice.
see it's just on a piece of 3mm. I don't have a case for it yet because I want to actually make a bigger ZX81 case and put it inside of that.
Yeah.
But there's all the wiring on the back. Rainbow. I love rainbow colored ribbon cables.
Yeah.
So,
Love those. Too.
but yeah, it's
That's great. So
It's quick.
3mm was a good thickness? Because I've been
Yeah,
thinking about
it's,
exactly the same thing.
yeah, it's and you know, there's links on my blog to Amazon, their affiliate marketing links. So you know, they don't charge you anymore, but you know, you can. I put links to everything because I did quite a bit of research looking at different options and what I could use and what I could do. I on the second post, which I hope to put out in the next week or two, I will go more into detail about.
Ingo, I'm just trying to scan your post real quickly here. Okay, you talk about using keyboard layout editor, and then, oh, good. So you talk about, oh, fascinating. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and there's links to everything. So I didn't go into a lot of depth on those applications, but there
Yeah.
are some YouTube videos out there, and most of it's pretty self-explanatory.
That's perfect.
Yeah. So I was even thinking, you know, for any other older retro computers, it wouldn't be difficult to follow the same path that I took for the ZX81 keyboard and you know, make your own keyboards. I think the next step is going to be to actually make a PCB and put a microcontroller on it so that I can do the keyboard buffer. Who was it? What was the guy's name last time? Tim, maybe?
Ooh,
He commented on how cool it would be to actually have a keyboard buffer so that, you know, you don't get ahead of the
I think that was
SETI.
Carl. Yeah,
Carl.
yeah.
And so I was going to do a microcontroller just to be able to do key mappings and do different keyboard layouts that would still work with the ZX81. But his idea of a buffer is great. And if you've got something in between, you could probably have it store keystrokes from the keyboard and then only spit them out as the computer's ready for them. But then you don't have lost keystrokes. So I'm already, the gears are turning.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
So Jeff Mazur,
Mhm.
are you ready to continue? Or
Well, I just looked through my folder of correspondence. Unfortunately, all I found were some nice letters from Woz, but all the stuff on the Timex is probably stored with the manuscript and all the stuff. So maybe if you guys meet once a month.
So we meet the first Monday in the evenings at 9 p.m. and then we meet the third Sunday at 2 p.m. But this past third Sunday was Easter, which I guess is some sort of, you know, big deal for some people.
Yeah.
They like to eat ham and whatnot. So that's why we're doing today. So
Okay.
our next meeting will actually be, I think, in 2-ish weeks. Let me just look. Today's the 24th. It'll be next Monday, May 2nd at 9
Okay.
p.m.
Well, I can try to look that stuff up and join you guys then.
Cool. Did you find us on Facebook or something?
Yeah, like I said, I don't know who posted the thing about the anniversary, but I saw that come up in my feed.
Okay.
And like most of you, I hate Facebook, but something came up and it looked interesting, and I thought, well, let me look and see what's going on with the Timex. Like I said, I think when I did a search of groups, years came up, and that's what got me here.
You should be able to find me based on the events, and or if you want to email me, I'll put my email in the chat, and I can add you to the little calendar, Google Calendar event, so you can decide. Oops, that should be Gmail, not Gmail.
I'll correct it, but I'll when we're done, I'll send you an email just so you have my address.
Okay, cool.
Actually, I'll do it now so I don't forget.
Jeff Burrell, are you there?
Is my sound working yet?
It is. And I want to introduce the two Jeffs because Jeff Mazur, I have done the same thing to Jeff Burrell in that someone did to you, which was, hey, there's this really great idea. And then Jeff is like, yeah, I'm going to go work on that. So Jeff, take it away.
Well, right now I'm in the process of trying to come up with the 2068 compatible SD card interface. And as I said in my emails, I've decided to stick with a Raspberry Pi Pico as kind of the engine for this. And what you're seeing on my screen is an interface board that I built for some other reason. And there's a Pico on there and the connections to the SD card. The USB connector is running off to my PC. So right now, I'm in the process of debugging the code that does all the low-level routines to the SD card. And I'm able to talk to it and get some stuff back, but there are some things in the SD spec that I'm still sussing out. But the upshot of it is that it looks like the hardware is pretty much on its way toward working, at least at the low level. And after that, it'll just be putting a fat file system on top of it.
So Jeff, does the fat file system you're looking at, is that the one that I think might also be called Chan FS? Yeah.
I'm looking at porting that over to the Raspberry Pi Pico. There are some things in that particular set of routines that I'll need to add to, because for instance, I want to be able to allow multiple partitions on the SD card. And I don't know if I haven't seen where the fat file system allows you to do that. So that won't be too difficult to do.
Very cool. And you're still thinking about a CPLD for the sort of memory mapping issues?
Yeah, there's I suppose it's getting too far into the weeds, but there's a 7000A series from Altera, Intel now, that is 5-volt compatible, has the necessary logic on board. So basically all I would need to do would be to add some static RAM and and some flash or double EEPROM for the boot code.
Very cool. How are you going to do level translation between the Pico and the 5-volt data bus?
Well, the cute thing about that is that the CPLD works on 3.3 volts. However, it has 5-volt tolerant pins.
Oh, okay. Yes.
So I'm looking at I'm sorting through all of the Pico peripherals. So right now it's a toss up between using a serial port in the CPLD to talk to the Raspberry Pi, or possibly a SPI implementation.
Very cool. Wow.
This
has gone way beyond the initial thoughts.
Well, the thing is that the nice thing about the Raspberry Pi is that it brings a lot of heft. So I can have the Pi running the fat file system. It can also interface that USB output that I'm using right now for debugging. That can be a serial port to a PC. And there's a place for a real-time clock chip in there, and possibly some other things. So,
wow, that's just amazing. That's just that'll solve a lot of problems.
Well, I'm hoping it'll be useful.
Yeah. So I don't want to throw another idea at you. I can't recall where I have seen this, but I believe that I have. You know what? I've seen a an emulator, a Spectrum emulator that runs on like a Pi Zero. Is it a Pi Zero? The smallest of the Pis, not this one. And which then implies that it, generates it emulates the SCLD in the Zero. I cannot for the life of me recall. I think that this runs on top of a Linux. But one of the things that I have thought about over the past couple of years is the possibility of using a Pi to monitor, the data bus and just do the video portion of, regenerating the video as pretty clean video instead of what comes out of the computer. Not a thing that you need to think about. I don't want to bog you down anymore. But certainly I'm in thorough agreement that the little ARM, that's an ARM processor. Yeah, the ARM processor in those Raspberries is really, really nice.
Yeah, I might want to start. I might want to start looking at that option because it's impossible to get FPGAs anymore, and so even the development boards.
Right. Well, it's a little difficult to get Pis right now, but certainly the 2040 there is a little easier to get. I know there was a point I was going to make about something that Jeff Mazur said, and I have since lost it in my head. I'm going to blame the COVID.
COVID brain. Well, you want an HDMI output, right? Is that what we're looking for?
Right. And without, horrible, you can get RGB out of the 2068, but it's 3-bit, so it's 7 colors. You don't get the intensity bit that comes with later versions of the Spectrum. So you can sort of get quality video if you run it through a couple steps, but I think, as I was saying to Jeff Burrell, I think it's certainly possible to hang a Raspberry Pi like a Zero off the expansion bus and program it to, in essence, just be the video portion of the SCLD, just, sort of a parallel video chip, as it were. And the Pi Zero already has an HDMI port on it, so life is even better. Anyway, that's my rambling.
Is anybody familiar with the FujiNet project?
Yeah, I've been following that because I have an Atari computer.
Okay, have they done any? Not that it makes sense, but none of this does. I'm just wondering if they've done anything with the Spectrums and.
There is, I saw some, it's funny you should ask. I saw some code that it was a while ago, and I can't recall if it was in the context of they borrowed something from something called SpecNet or what, but I don't think that, I think it's a guy named Thomas Cherryholmes who does that.
Yeah.
And I don't think that he has turned his full attention to the Sinclair computers yet. The last thing I saw him talking about that on Facebook was he was asking, who was he asking? Some other, my home micro group. But he's done it for the Atari. I think he's working on the Coleco Atom, or maybe he's finished that.
I think so. I know he's working on the Apple II. It's not quite finished, but yeah, he's got it 90% of the way there.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing. So for the folks who don't know what the FujiNet is this started, I think, a few years ago, and it's a little plug-in dojigger. It started as for the Atari, and you plugged it in, and it would give you, I can't recall, does it have a built-in SD card, Jeff?
It actually does, but I think the main issue is getting you on the internet and booting from something, 10,000 miles away.
Right. And somehow Plato is involved. And that was the part that really kind of puzzled me, is he has this obsession with the old Plato mainframe, education operating system thing. But yeah, basically it's the way to get your computer on the internet and get it access to stuff that you would never be able to get access to. And it's a fascinating little device. Go look it up. Especially if you have an Atari, any of the Atari computers. Or I guess if you have an Coleco Atom.
I mean, the biggest feature is that, again, you can have this software library that's out there on the internet. I don't know how much software was ever really available for the Sinclairs, and I don't. It makes sense to even have access to 50 titles or even 100 titles. But
right. So Jeff, I actually have done that work. I went through all of the publications that I have been able to get my hands on, all the issues of Sync and Timex Sinclair User and all of the sort of amateur press magazines that came after that, and user group newsletters and etc. And put it on my website. And there's something along the lines of 3,000 products.
wow.
Yes.
Products, software
Product.
or
Hardware, software. Yeah. Let me.
Well, that's enough. It's enough.
Well, and if you're able to
Oh,
run a Spectrum ROM on your 2068, then you have access to a huge library from the
Sure.
Speccy.
From
Yeah.
Spectrum, yeah.
So Jeff, here's
Of course.
of course it's gonna drop out. Anyway, the point is, I put all this on my website, and then I exported it into a book that's kind of like a Sears catalog of the software and the hardware.
Cool.
And it is 543 pages long.
Wow.
Not granted, I did make the type large enough so that we older folks can read it.
So that's just the name of the software. I guess the question is there some place where it exists digitally that, somebody
So
could-
the stuff that's preserved is like
Yeah.
a super small fraction. That's actually the thing that I'm really hoping to get accomplished over the next couple of years in terms of getting the word out, finding people, and people saying, oh yeah, I've got this thing. Speaking of which, I have this cassette. Now this is just absurd. I have this cassette from a company called General Systems Consulting. If anybody did not file their 1982 1040 EZ, I've got the 2068 package to help you out with that. You just let me know. As soon as I get this recorded, I'll upload it to the internet, and you can download it to your 2068 and file your tax return from 1982. But yeah, there's that kind of thing. One of the other folks on this Zoom, David Solly, he was the librarian for his user group, and as a result, he ended up with all the cassettes that the user group collected, right? And he's working on recording those into the computer and making them available so that I can upload them. And he's actually sent me an SD card and some cassettes of some CX81 software. There was a guy that was in his user group that wrote a bunch of stuff. It was really a colorful individual, shall we say. And all his stuff got preserved. And so we're going to be putting that up on the site soon. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot out there. One of the, so for instance, you mentioned, you made this little device for doing music, right? There was a guy named Tad Painter, and he wrote, here we go. let me go to his trying to, oh, he wrote a speech synthesizer program for the 1000 and then the 2068. And I can't tell you where I found it, but the 2068 version of his software was preserved. I haven't been able to get it to load. I can get it to load. I just can't figure out how to work it. And then somebody else, sent me a pile of documents at one point, and it included some instructions from that, from Tad Painter's 2068 program. And so, slowly but surely, I'm trying to build it all. The website's pretty expensive. Lots and lots of stuff. You're on there because your book. So, anybody else got topics they want to talk about? Don't jump all in at once. Don't all jump in at once.
Looking for, I lost the book and I don't have my computer anymore, sadly, but I'm looking for, I thought it was mastering assembly language on the ZX81.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
You're talking about the Tony Baker book,
Yes.
yellow cover. You
Yes.
can actually find, there is a version of it online as HTML with corrections.
Oh,
That's right.
Burner, something like that. I have actually got the book here, but the online HTML version has corrections to it.
okay, cool. I'll
You
try to
can't quite
find
see
it.
yours, David. There are a couple, so there are actually a number of assembly books out there for the ZX1. They're online. I think Tony Baker's might actually be downloadable from an archive. I'm not sure.
Yep.
But the HTML version is the one you want because it does have corrections for a rat, so problems in the book. And if you don't have the ZX81 still, there's a number of various emulators out there that'll work quite well.
Yeah, I was looking at that.
I
I
wanted to
was,
see that hardware. I don't do hardware now. I'm strictly all emulator.
yeah, I was actually looking at that and kind of thinking about, now that I'm retired and all of that, trying to do a little bit more programming and kind of fool around again with it. So I was kind of wanted to get a hold of that book. I do have an old assembly language development system from Microsoft. It's for the CPM that I slapped in the Apple II Plus. I'm looking at it, I'm going like, wow, it sure would have been nice to buy some Microsoft stock then.
Or Apple.
Or Apple, exactly. But anyway, so yeah, okay, cool. So I guess it's Tony Baker mastering.
Yeah, no. So David's got one up. I'm not sure if that's the.
That's the later version, same book, but different
Oh, there we
cover.
are.
Yeah, but there is an HTML version. The guy's name starts with TH. I want to say it's Thurner or something like that. But it does have all the errata and the fixes, so it's much better. There's a number. What platform do you actually use? Windows, Mac, or Linux?
Windows guy.
81 is a good emulator, and I'm not too sure what a good cross assembler is because I haven't really used it. I did use TASM under DOS, under like DOS shell or something. So TASM works. I use Pasmo under Linux. I'm not sure if Pasmo has a Windows version, but there are a number of cross emulators. Look at the ZX81 forums. They actually have a lot of discussion about, most of the people that are Windows based, and a lot of discussion about Windows with assembly language programming and the 81.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
I see we have a Tom with us. Tom, do you want to introduce yourself since you're new to us, roughly? Oh, looks like it says you're unmuted, but your audio's not coming through.
Check your mic setting.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, it's okay.
Anybody know sign language?
Right, right. Tim, if you know what, I'll see if I can find a link to that HTML version. I know what you're talking about though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've used it before. All right, so Frank, this is an odd way of saying it. Google the phrase "mind of Tim Swinson." It's my website, and I have a page there, a document on doing ZX81 assembly. I think at the time it was actually under when I was running Windows. I think I was running TASM under regular shell. This is probably Windows XP I was running at the time, but was using 81 as the emulator.
Tim Swinson.
Yeah, SWENSON.
I got YouTube. Are you a YouTube person?
Not really. I might have a few things on YouTube, but again, it's the phrase "mind of Tim Swinson" is the title of my website.
Okay, cool.
Why is the X81 QL and 26.8 stuff there?
Yeah, Tim's got a lot of good resources for programming the 81. Very good. Very good.
I do
Thank you.
more of that recently, but some rabbit decided to chew through my power supply for my netbook, so I have to wait until I get that back. Get a new one.
That sounds like an interesting story, Tim.
Yeah.
Well, my daughters too. They're free range. They run around the backyard. They come in the house. They like to go behind my recliner here, and they have nibbled on the AC cord. But yesterday they went right through it. So I'm like, why is it my battery dead? Why am I not charging? And I pull the cord out. It's like, oh, it's only a foot long because it was totally disconnected from the brick. So jumped on Amazon, got a new one coming hopefully Wednesday. We'll see how that goes.
That was the low voltage side they nibbled on, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I've
Didn't
had
hear Yelp
rabbits.
or anything. So
I've experienced the same thing. Rabbits love electrical wires for some reason.
I knew a guy back in the 80s who in Sunnyvale, he had a rabbit and it munched through his ribbon cables on his 2068.
Oh.
I think he had like a longer ribbon cable in the back going to a disk drive or something, and it just came along and munched through it.
Oh. That
was
would have been
Andy this is a guy that actually went and tried to sell the QL door to door in Sunnyvale area.
Really? How did that work out for him?
86, 87, 88, something like that.
So now just, hear me out for a second here. My understanding is that when you're selling something door to door, you need sort of like, you need a shtick, right? Like, if you're selling a vacuum door to door, you take a bag of dirt with you and you throw it on the, poor person's floor, right? And you say, look, my powerful vacuum can get this up. And then you get beat up, right? At least that's my assumption. What's the shtick for the QL door to door?
I have no idea. I think he had a couple people in his apartment complex that had bought it. And maybe something like that. I don't know.
That had to be the highest density of QLs in the United States.
I think he moved to Colorado and was still active in the QL for a while, and then kind of got out of it.
Tim, we need to talk to this person. We need to hear this story firsthand. I think this is
all right. So his name is Andy. His last name is Radesky, but it's spelled with HR.
Oh, yes, I know who you're talking about.
Okay.
Yes,
very unique last name. There's probably
Yes.
only one or two people around with that last name.
Yes.
He was actually an airman first class stationed at Sunnyvale Air Force Station when I met him.
Yeah.
I think I actually did visit him. He was involved in the Peninsula Group. In fact, Sunnyvale Air Force Station, where I got my first ID card too. But I lost track of him somewhere in the 90s. So
he was somehow, was he contributing to a news group, a user group or something like that? Did he write articles? Because I recognize his name in that context of.
Yeah, very unique last name. I can't remember exactly spelled.
It's like HRADETZSKI.
Name, so
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a local to our user group here. And then so I was only involved in that user group for like a year, year and a half, because I was too busy during college, but toward the end of my college time and right after college, I had some free time. So I was doing the user group meetings, and then I left California.
Yeah. It'll take me a minute to come up with his name, but I know exactly who you're talking about. Okay, I'll track him down, because to me I have to hear this story.
Gotta hear the tales.
I do. Well, come on. Door-to-door sales of the QL. That is.
I think that's how he described it. Now, it may have just been local to his apartment complex and getting people,
But
interested.
even that, that like I said, that's got to be the highest density of QLs, in a square mile in the United States at a certain point in time, except for A+ computer sales or something.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if there was any other clusters of QLs running around. Yeah. I can tell you right now, the nearest person to me is probably going to be David, the guy that wrote Q Emulator. He's up in Washington State.
Yeah.
Are there any other active ones nearby? Oh, there was another person. No, that was San Diego. One of the guys joined us a while back was from San Diego.
Okay.
So maybe just a touch closer.
Okay. Cool.
So, and then the nearest from that is going to be Texas with, Dave P is his name. He was worked at Sandy. He's also active doing retro for a lot of other things and still doing the QL.
Cool. Very cool. Tom, did you get your mic to work? No. Okay. So, Tom, if you've shaved your beard, I'm guessing you're Tom Woods. Is that right? No, not Tom Woods. Okay. All right.
Try some headsets. You got any headsets, earbuds?
So what else has everybody been else up to? David Solly, what have you been doing? I'm putting you on the spot, David.
You put me on the spot. I've been just mostly transferring a lot of programs from tape into digital files that will work in the emulators. I found out that I've got more than I ever thought I had. And then I said, oh, gee whiz, this looks interesting. A digital file, and I put it in. Oh, error. So, unfortunately, as librarian, I had to accept a lot of these files on face value, and some of them, well, were not very well preserved or very well converted. So, unfortunately, there's a whole chunk of those that I may not be able to offer to the group, but. Other than that, I haven't been doing very much except maybe looking to learning how to program in MicroProlog.
So was that when you asked in the chat about MicroProlog, was that for the 2068 or for a different platform?
No, it's for the Spectrum.
The Spectrum. Okay.
It's for the Spectrum. Yeah.
Was that HiSoft?
No, I think it's something called Abersoft.
Okay. All right. They also did languages, I recall.
The only other language that I've ever used was I tried the Abersoft C, but unfortunately that is strictly integer, so not too very useful for what I was interested in. And I tried to use the your Sinclair Mega Basic.
Oh, right.
And I'll have to try it again on one of the more modern emulators, but I could not make it work on Lunter's Z80 emulator at all. It would load, but that's about all it would do. But I'm still interested in programming in other languages other than BASIC, and my strongest language, non-basic language for Sinclair computers is Pascal. It's still Pascal. And I'm going through a lot of, oh my God, if I only knew then what I know now, I could have done some wondrous things.
Yes, yes. Right. I think that often about, when I was 13 versus what I know now. Speaking of Pascal, I don't know, how many of you guys know this. There was a Pascal for the 1000. It was written, was published by a company called Semper Software, and the guy who wrote it, I think, was Michael Amling, and he later went on to do compilers for other platforms, like a Modula 2 for the Mac. I think it might have been the first or one of the earliest Modula 2s for the Mac. So this Pascal for the 1000, let me remind you, this was a Pascal that ran on the smallest of the machines. It was, in my opinion, a little bizarre. You would load up an editor and type your program, and then there was a second step, I think, where it would compile, but not into P code, but into something that you would load again into essentially an interpreter, which would then run your program. And had all kinds of limitations. I think it was really just largely a teaching version of Pascal. So for the longest time, all we had was a P file for this partial Pascal, it was called. And you could load it into an emulator, but you couldn't do anything with it because, like, one of the very first thing it asks you is how you wanted it to work, and you had to enter in a 3-letter code that told it, how you were going to do the first step, the second step, and the third step. And without the manual, you had no idea what these codes were, or what they did, what to enter, etc. So a couple years back, somebody turns up a really poor photocopy of the manual, which was done on a dot matrix printer, I think. And I downloaded the whole thing and ran it through some OCR, and then I hired somebody to do a little bit of cleanup on it, and then I did some more cleanup on it. And so now, we finally had a manual. Well, somebody posted a YouTube video. They decided to give it a whirl and posted a YouTube video of loading the Pascal and typing in a program and then running the program and then getting the output. I'll post the link in the chat. It's I don't know if it's a thing of beauty or a thing of utter bizarre behavior, but if Pascal's your thing and you want to torture yourself, this is the tool with which to do it. It is no Turbo Pascal, let me put it that way.
The only other language I ever used with the TS1000 was I tried to use the Forth package, but it was so unreliable as far as saving and loading was concerned. And then it would use the keys in a bizarre form, like you'd have to use the @ sign for a fetch and a exclamation mark for a post, and you found out that was a graphic shift something or other and a graphic shift something else again. And it got so complicated. I kind of looked at it and said, do I really want to put myself through all this to learn how to program on Forth on the TS1000? But I did manage to find a book in French all about how to program in Forth on the ZX81. So somebody must have thought it was worthwhile.
So that actually is a good point, because there was a couple of Forths, like you said, for the 81. And there was a company in Arkansas, Hog Wild Computing, that sold Forths for the 2068. And I have been dying to get my hands on a decent Forth for the 2068, just because I'm terribly curious about Forth.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of our members who was very much into Forth, I believe it was Michael Dove, had it. He said that it was a poor implementation because it was not kind of self-standing as most Forths are. And he said he looked at it and he said it made so many calls to the ROM that just slowed down the whole thing.
Oh, okay. Okay.
However, if you are interested, I do have the tape and somewhere I do have the manual. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would love to be able to just preserve it. There's a Forth, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's a website where somebody has made a very portable version of Forth, and there's a Z80 version, which I think they compiled for CPM, so it's in the wrong space in memory. But I'm tempted to try to retro hack it into, like, a language cartridge for the 2068.
There's
But,
a fourth ROM available, one that with a couple of the emulators.
That's
I don't know what
the
that is.
that's like the H Fourth or the Tree
Yeah,
Fourth. Yeah, that's for the
So-
81. I was looking.
actually, if I remember correctly, somebody actually made a ROM cartridge for the 2068 with Forth on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
So although being curious about Forth is like being curious about a lobotomy.
but when
It's
you
a
stop and
horrible
think of it, the Jupiter Ace was essentially a ZX 81
Forth,
with
yeah.
a ROM, with a Forth ROM in it. Well,
Yes.
I don't know if any of you ever had a Jupiter Ace or fooled around with it. I looked at it in emulation, but that's about as far as I got. And one of the French Sinclair magazines called Orvie 5 was very big on Jupiter Ace programming. And supposedly I had a lot of dedicated people who would submit programs to it in Jupiter Ace Forth. Boy, that's a mouthful.
Two languages I do not do: Lisp and Forth. Those
It's-
exact French languages.
It's funny you should mention Lisp, because that was another one that I, sort of got into reading about when in the early 80s.
I had to write a program years ago in college for Lisp, and it actually worked the very first time, and that scared the what out of me. The fact that I could write Lisp good the first time. Yeah, that was a horrible language.
It's a good thing you're not charged by the parentheses on Lisp.
Yeah.
At least one of the things about the Timex Sinclair, the Spectrum, excuse me. Let's try that again. One thing about the Spectrum and the TS 2068 Forth was, once you compiled the program, it was completely ROMable, and for a long time that was what Larry Kenny was using to power his cutting lathes.
His CAD CAM machines.
Yes.
Very cool. Very cool.
Excuse me. Oh dear, one more cough like that could mean the glue factory.
I see we have a new person with us, Ricardo. Ricardo, you want to say hi and tell us give us a little of your history.
Hello, I'm from Portugal. I started programming with the ZX Spectrum, and I also have some Timex, but I have the European version. I have the Timex computer versions of the 2068. They're basically the same machine, but the back end, the edge connector is Spectrum compatible, and the cartridge is slightly different, but it's basically the same machine. And I'm now working in IT. I'm systems administrator, and I collect a lot of computers from Spectrums, from Sinclair. I have Commodore 8-bit, I have Commodore, I still don't have Commodore 16-bit, 32-bit, I have Ataris, I have some really unusual, uncommon European computers like Enterprise, Auric, and stuff like that. I like to collect BBC micros. I like all those computers. To me, it was the golden age of computing. Was that? Now it's all market oriented, and some cool stuff still coming out, but I really enjoy programming on the machine that directly. And Facebook just reminded me that this event was today, and I joined just to hear a bit your experience.
So
Okay.
that's awesome. Sometimes, do you know Joao, who
João Diogo Ramos.
does the load ZX?
Yes, I know him.
Spectrum? Right. So he joins us sometimes. He joined us a few months ago, and gave us a very excited, and it was a tremendously amusing discussion about the museum and all the stuff going on there. He's an amazing resource. He's doing a lot of great work.
Yeah, I started collecting a lot of computers also, and this weekend was the 40th anniversary of the ZX Spectrum. I was going to be there, but unfortunately on Friday I had an accident with my car, so I cannot make the drive there.
And he's been very busy with all that this weekend. Yeah.
Ricardo, there is a Sinclair QL forums chat group. If you go to Sinclair QL forums, find the link to the chat group. A number of the folks in there, almost all of them there, are from the UK or Europe, and they're not only just into QLs. A couple of them love BBC micros, and a couple of them love Amigas. And lately, all I've been talking about is extra hardware for the Amigas, or Miggies as they call them. So that might be interesting. You might, since you like the BBC micro, you might want to join that and talk with those guys. I do get to comment in there occasionally saying heresy. He's not talking about QLs, but they're very active. And again, BBC Micro Amiga is a big one. One guy has the 60,000, like X60,000 machine. I can't remember who it was by. It's one of the Japanese ones.
Yeah, I know.
They actually have it. So it's on chat, it's on IRC, but they also have a Discord that connects the two together. But if you go to Sinclair QL forums, you'll see a link to the forum. They're pretty much active UK time, GMT time. I always come in late because I'm in California. But so that might be, if you mention BBC, they'll be happy to see you.
I have a couple of QLs also.
Okay, that's good too.
Yeah, that's some hardware. I'm still working on making I have a floppy controls. I have a QBDA, which is a EDA interface for the QL. Put a compact flash card and write on it, but I didn't have many time yet to play with the QL. I have to read my basis is the Spectrum. That's what I remember, and what I learned to program in BASIC and assembly when I was 12, 13. So still working, but I like programming. Though my job is not programming, doesn't involve much programming, is mostly installing operating systems and networks and stuff like that. But I like programming these old computers, very fun on learning assembly. But I'll have a go. When I decide to take on the QL, I'll join them.
Well, they do talk a lot about the micro and the Amiga. Lately, that's all I've been talking about, probably the last 4 or 5 days. So
yeah, the Amiga is an awesome machine. I think most people talk about the rivalry between the Commodore Amiga and the Atari ST, but they have to remind that the chipsets on the Amiga, they were designed originally by a team that came out of Atari and were contracted to design to Atari. And when Tramiel decided they were too expensive, they were bought by Commodore. But the basis of the design of the Amiga chipsets are from Atari. This is the basis of the 8-bit Atari chipsets.
Yep,
that's interesting. Yeah, the BBC Micro is interesting because it's a great machine in terms of design. It's very, very, very well designed. It has those interfaces for second processor, for everything. You can interface almost anything with it. It's very interesting for an 8-bit machine. And the Spectrum got all the attention because it was a fairly accessible machine, a fairly affordable machine with colors. So it's very famous here in Europe because a lot of people learn how to program and went into IT because of it, like me.
It was pretty affordable, right? I mean, that was my impression.
Sorry?
it was pretty affordable, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
For example, a Commodore back then in pounds, I know the prices. I've been reading about it. In England, the Commodore 64 cost about £400, which was a lot of money.
Okay.
And the Spectrum cost £129. It's a very big difference.
Yeah. And
We
I
have
mean,
the same thing here in the US with the Apple II versus other home computers.
oof,
Yeah.
tell me about it.
Remember, the Apple II was $1,200 and at the same time I went to the Byte shop in Hayward. Apple II was $1,200, their cheapest. Went to Computer Land in Hayward, and they had the VIC-20 for $400. So then I found out the ZX81 was a whole lot cheaper. So, but
A lot
my
cheaper.
first used car was less than the Apple II.
Yeah, right.
And here in Europe, the ZX81 was sold in kit form for assembly at home for about £50. So it's very, very affordable back then for to have a home computer in the beginning of the 80s. It was very affordable.
Ricardo, they sold the ZX81 here in kit form. I think the initial ads, the 81 assembled was $150 and the kit was $99. And you would see these ads. I believe they were in
Popular Mechanics, October 1981.
Yeah, that was where I first encountered him, was in Popular Mechanics. Exactly. It was so bizarre to me, and it was great because it was like a 2-page ad. You had the unassembled version on the left-hand side and the assembled version on the right-hand side. And I would just stare at that for, a very long time and try to convince my mom that I could build this.
There was an article in Popular Mechanics months previously just saying, oh, hey, look, the ZX81 just came out in the UK. I'm like, well, that's interesting. And then I looked around, I looked at other computers. As soon as the ad came out, I go, $250, $100 for the extra memory, $150 for the ZX81. I think within a week of me seeing that ad, I cut it out and sent it in. And I got it, my ZX81, the day before Thanksgiving, 1981.
Yeah. And $250, that was still a lot of money,
Oh, yeah.
Yes, back
It was,
then, yes.
and I remember I got a couple years later, I got a 64, and I think that they were still in the $400, $500 price range.
Yeah,
it was maybe 84 that they were that expensive, and that was still a lot of money, And to buy, as Tim was saying, to buy an Apple was, that was just ridiculous because it was $1,300, and all you got was the box. You still had to get some kind of storage mechanism. I can't recall, was the 12, like it was like $12.99. Was that price, Tim? Was that the 16K or the 48K version? I think it was the
sure.
16K version.
It depends when you got it.
Yeah.
I just remember walking into the Byte shop in Hayward saying, hey, what's your cheapest computer? And they go, we have Apple II for $1,200. All right. And I just walked out because I had no way I could afford that at the time.
I paid that for a 4K version.
Whoa.
By the way,
Early on,
David, I just wanted to mention you were talking about Forth. I just took a look at the MAME emulator. I don't know if you guys use that for the Spectrum. I didn't even know they had one, but they do have it, and they do have Forth for that as well. So
for which computer?
Well, the MAME emulators run pretty much on PCs.
Yeah, no, I mean, which
Oh,
is
well,
the Forth?
Yeah, ZX 81 Forth by David Husband.
Yeah. So that Forth, there's a web forum. I think it's called Sinclair ZX World. Is that right, Tim?
Yeah. Like that.
And they are dedicated to all things ZX81, right?
Mm-hmm.
And somebody asked a question about that Forth in particular, the husband Forth, and they managed to figure out, or whatever, that is a stolen version of somebody else's Forth.
Oh.
So whoever came out with it back in the 80s, they took somebody else's Forth and made some minor changes. There was an American Forth called Treeforth which was also called Multi-Fourth. And that appeared in at least one issue of Sync magazine. And that was a little ROM chip too. Ingo, you were asking about Stuart. All you have to do is say his name thrice and he shows up. Stuart, your mic's off.
We mentioned stolen software. October 1981, Byte magazine, there was a article on Othello, and there was a basic version produced. And one of the Sinclair ZX81 versions is a direct copy of that version. Variable names all the same, obviously edited a bit to fit the ZX81 in its style, but I'm looking at it going, oh man, this is just a direct copy.
So you bring up a very amusing point, Tim, and because I have seen, like I said, I cataloged all this stuff, right? And at a certain point, you start to see a repetition of program names. How many versions of Othello can there be, right? Or how many versions of Star Trek can there be? I often wondered, for a bunch of these programs, how many of them are actually somebody took, one of those programs from, the creative computing book on
Right.
More basic computer games or whatever, right? And just typed it in and decided to sell. I'm gonna sell this on a cassette, because how much enforcement would there have been? How that would have been possible back then? But I think that there's a lot of that out there.
I noticed that user groups did a lot of that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
I don't think commercial did quite as much, but user groups would definitely type it in and pass it around and modify it.
You were talking about Forth. I have right next to me a Minstrel Forth, basically a clone of the Jupiter.
Yes.
I bought it in kit form and assembled it as some differences. This is basically, the Jupiter was basically a slightly modified ZX81 to run Forth, but it's the same. And it's a very nice kit. And it runs also in ZX81 mode, but the keyboard is for the Jupiter Cantab clone. There's a lot of stuff going there. There's a lot of boards for old computers. If you damage a board, a PCB, there's PCB for Spectrums, for Amigas, for Ataris, for almost anything. Even clones, MSX clones. I have a few MSX also. It's a nice machine. I have two Toshibas, HX10 and an SVI, a Spectrum Video 738. But Forth is interesting because it's a very low-level language. The ideas, the concepts are thinking almost in machine code. So, but has some weirdness, but it's very effective because it's basically the same kind of paradigm used on assembly language. So it's very fast language compared to BASIC.
Very fast. Very fast.
Aren't most Forth programs written or most Forth compilers or languages written in Forth?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have now Forth for SP32 boards, those microcontroller boards. You have Forth for it. There's a group in Facebook dedicated to it.
I'm gonna have to go look for that.
I think the proms in the Sun systems, their Spark systems, are actually written in Forth. So if you went into single user mode and got real low level, you would be in a Forth shell.
See, I'm being vindicated.
Again, you're still looking like you're crazy. You want to try Forth personally. You can try it. I know people like it, but it's just not for me.
It's an acquired taste.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about building, an observatory in my backyard, and I understand it's good for controlling the movement of my telescope.
Yes, because it's the way of thinking of the Forth language. I've been studying it a bit, and it's very machine oriented in terms of controlling, in terms of the way the syntax goes is very low level. So it's very oriented. It's not as low level as assembly, but it's very oriented. It's good for controllers because it's very direct in terms of the ideas. So
I think that's how HP tried to sell their calculators that were all RPN. And they said, oh, that's the logical way to do things. But
in terms of interpreting to machine code, makes sense because it's the same way you do work in stack on the stack heap. It's the same idea. It's this.
Yeah. Hey, Stuart, did you manage to get a hold of Jeff Street, since we have a plethora of Jeffs today? I thought I'd ask about the other Jeff.
No, I didn't. No.
Okay. So I
You
don't know
don't
if,
shun you.
I don't know if right. I don't know if Stuart. I don't. You weren't here at the beginning. Our other Jeff today is Jeff Mazur, the guy who wrote the book Behind His Head.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly. And he just sort of dropped in. He found us.
dropped in.
Yep. I think I have more copies left than he does.
Probably.
Probably have 3 copies I had missed for.
So Jeff, Stuart is the person that did Zebra. Zebra what?
Zebra Systems.
Zebra Systems. He supported the Timex, computers for a couple years after. Oh dear Lord! After.
Are those all the first printing or the second printing?
I don't know. Hold on.
How you tell the difference, Jeff?
Yeah, right. How do we tell the difference?
On the what do they call that page? The code, not code.
I mean, the first page tells you the inner page. Let me see.
Yeah,
Okay.
Let me go check mine.
I mean, because there were a lot of in the right across from the preface.
Yeah, good looking young fellow over there.
Yeah, look at that. I don't know who that is.
What are the differences between the two, Jeff? Do you recall?
Well, again, there was, because of the fact that the editor who I was working with, let's see, did they actually do it?
Second printing.
Oh, well, there you go. Then you got all the errata in there. That's good because there were a bunch of mistakes.
Somewhere here it says.
Yeah, I just remember that when I was the editor that they assigned to me at the SAMS.
Yeah.
Was not really into the computer. I remember, like, for instance, yeah, he did it. Like I submitted, all the programs in lowercase because that's how it looks like when you type it in.
Oh yeah,
on the computer, and he said he rejected that and said no, all programs need to be written all uppercase. And previous machines, I get that, because, it made more sense to print them all uppercase. And I do see now, I guess I lost that battle because I said, by the time, we were getting ready, like I said, we got to get this book out. Timex has already decided to leave the market. Let's just get out as many as we can while they're still selling them. So, I basically, I don't want to say I didn't give it all my all, but there were I'll just say a dozen or so, pretty, not just syntactical or not just, grammatical errors, but in some of the printouts and stuff. So if anybody has tried to put anything in there and it doesn't work, then go. I think online you can get a PDF version of the second printing.
So
how was this one already out? Was the beginner book already out when you?
Yeah. Fred, you missed some of that discussion. Yeah, Fred was a good friend of mine. He wrote the beginner one, and his was already out because it was basically a basic book. And I was waiting to get all kinds of information from Sinclair on the ins and outs of the ROM routines and the chips that were being used in there. And getting permission to use some of the, the charts and whatever that I put in there. So it did come out, if I recall, it was, 4 or 5 months later. It was, quite a bit later. And like I said, by that time, Timex had already kind of decided to exit the market. So there you go. I will sign anybody's copy. But as I also said, Stuart, at the beginning, was that I may have written the book, but I pretty much immediately dropped any interest or continuing, following of Timex and Sinclair. So you guys are probably much more knowledgeable about, the machines and what has come since then. So
That's pretty fantastic. Stuart, I may want to get one of those second editions from you.
There's only 2 left.
oh, wow. They're rare, as we say in the Apple word, it's usually, rare look Steve Jobs, but in this case you can say, rare look Jeff Mazur. Sell it to him for $50.
No, I'll send you one, David. I'll send you one.
Actually, the truth is, I have sent out maybe a half a dozen in the last 10 years. Every now and then something comes up. Even in one of my Apple groups, someone mentioned they had the 2068. I said, "Oh, do you got this book?" He says, "No." I just sent him one. I even put a little note in there. So
that's awesome. Jeff, I know somebody that published a book, and it was fiction, and they did the publisher did the thing, and then sort of at the end of the cycle, a whole bunch of books got sent back to the publisher, right? And then packed up in boxes and put on a pallet. And they said to this person, they said, do you want these, or we're going to, send them to Jersey and they're going to be scrapped?
Yeah.
And did that happen to you?
No, like I said, when they finally printed it, I don't remember what the run was. And of course I was going to get royalties on it. They did give me a nice advance, so I didn't mind it, but so somewhere I have a list, and we didn't meet the quota, but they did a smaller run, and then they ran out and they had to do a second printing. But I think, there were probably some that were sent back, but it wasn't like they never contacted me about, like, do you want them? Sometimes they'll do it and they'll either give them to you or 50 cents a book or something. And I think Fred has done that did some of that with his other books, and then, sold them himself. But,
That's what I was thinking. I was wondering how you managed to get a cache of them.
Well, they did send me probably a dozen, or no more than that. I think at one point I may have had 20 of them.
Oh, wow.
So they just sent those to me as there's a name for it, but just to give away if you want. So, but yeah, I'm not saying it was a bad experience. Like I said, I was not happy with the editor, and then there was this back and forth about whether to even do the book. Which they'd already, like I said, paid me in advance for it. So I figured, they're going to at least print enough to try to recoup some of that. But didn't turn out, exactly how I planned, or would have liked to seen, the 2068 sell as many as the 1000, but by then, like I said, there were so many other computers. I think I've heard people say it was the Commodore that killed him, but I think really what happened was TI was also getting ready to, get out of the business. So they dumped the 99. I think was selling for like $400 at the time, maybe even $500. And then right when this book come out, they dropped it to like $199 or something like that. And Timex just said, we can't, compete with that. So they just went back to making watches.
That was TI's business model. They wrecked several industries. Their model was, we can make it cheaper than everybody else, and we'll corner the market and make a fortune. And they kind of killed all the profit margin in digital watches. They killed the profit margin in digital calculators. They went from one industry to another, and market to another, and basically got it to the point where they had to pull out because, I mean, I think you can you still get a TI calculator? Maybe, but that was their model.
Oh yeah. Actually, the what is it? The TI 82 or something like that is still like the required calculator for high school and some college math, and
The graphics calculator.
Yeah, and it's actually got a Z80 of some form inside of it, and folks have hacked it to no end. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think my daughter's had one. I've got one running around somewhere with a cable that I'd never play with it though. But yeah, it's a graphic calculator. Well, plus at the time in the early 80s, everyone had a home computer. You had the Mattel Aquarius, you had all the, and then there was such a choice that there's too many choices, and so no one had a good chunk of the market. I think it just plus at the same time, wasn't there a bust in the home video game market? They were also dying in the early 80s, and then it wasn't until Nintendo came out in 85 that it suddenly the market got better.
Yeah.
But a lot of video games are also having the same problem and kind of dying on the vine.
Well, to Jeff's point, I think it was the summer of 83. Well, there was the video game system crash, which happened in 83. And I think in 83, Timex, I want to say it was Timex, not Timex, TI got out of the market, or maybe it was 84. I remember my junior high school teachers commenting on how you could, they were going to go down to Kmart and buy a TI for $49 because now was the time. And I was like, okay,
yeah, my high school did a TI. So I graduated 82. I came back like 6 months later, the next year, and they actually had a TI 99 lab, one classroom set up with like 20 units as a lab.
Yeah.
So.
And Jeff, we had on a guy named Will Collum who was, he did some programming on the 1500 ROM. And his recollection is that Timex was tens of millions of dollars in the hole on the computer side. And that was the deciding factor, was that it was a big number in terms of how much money had been sunk, and the possibility of recouping it was going to be real difficult.
Do we think they lost that on the 1000s or
the whole business?
The whole business,
yeah, because like I said, they had set up Timex Computer Corporation as its own entity, and fed money in from Timex, the parent, to sort of keep it going. And the idea would be eventually that it would become self-sustaining, but it did not. Instead, it just became a black hole of money.
Sure. Remember, Timex came late because you had the ZX81 enter the American market in late 81, but the 1000 didn't happen until, I want to say, late 82, early 83. And those days, a year was a long time in computer world. So here was Timex trying to sell a bunch of 1000s, competing against Commodore and all these others. So they were. Plus, see, the ZX81 came out in early 81 in the UK, so they're kind of a year and a half behind the ball. Spectrum came out in the summer of 82, and then they had a delay of the FCC to get the 2068 out. That delayed them a while, so they were like a year behind on both machines.
But towards the end, like I said, I think when the 1000, it was originally $99. Is that what we decided, or that was the kid only or something? But
no, the 1000.
Well, 1000 was $100 when it came out.
Yeah.
And I think it dropped down to at like the Payless Drugs or some of those stores closed out like $10.
Yep.
Oh, I do remember seeing them in the grocery stores. Like I said, it was just a novelty. They'd be sitting there at the checkout line, and I think they were $49 at that point. But yeah, at some point they dumped them all because the sales went down. And they may have thought they were going to do the same thing with the later models, and it just didn't happen.
And Commodore was trying to sell a 64, said if you send in your old home computer, we'll give you $50. So a lot of people were buying 1000s for $10, getting it $50 off on the Commodore. They weren't interested in 1000. It's just that, well, gee, if I buy this for $10, I can make 40, turn it into $50.
I wonder how many came, shrink wrapped still, unopened.
Right. So from what documentation I've read, Timex, announced that they were building the ZX81 for Sinclair at Dundee, right? And at the same time, Sinclair was talking about their little TV, right? And in that same press release, Timex was going to build the little TV, right? And if you think about TVs back at that time, there was a lot of obsession about, sort of a pocket-sized television, right? There was Sinclair doing it. There was Sony was working on one, right?
Mhm.
And
For a TV watch.
right, Seiko, I think. And so one of the biggest challenges, of course, was the CRT, right? You had to shoot the electron beam perpendicular into the screen, and the idea that a lot of folks were working on was turning that sideways and putting in a very powerful reflector, so you would shoot the beam and then it would turn it 90 degrees and hit this, the screen, and so you could flatten it in that respect. If a lot of people thought that a portable TV was going to be like the next big thing. This is before the Walkman came out, right? And changed, blew everybody out of the water. And so Timex signed on to build both of those things, right? And the contract that they had said Sinclair could sell the ZX81 in the United States. And once they had sold 500,000 of these things, Timex would take over. And so that's why there's this long delay between when the ZX81 came out and when Timex announced that they were going to put out the 1000. My personal theory is that they were in it for the TV all along, right? Because they did contract manufacturing for other folks. They were a contract manufacturer for Polaroid, for instance. They built the first Polaroid cameras for the Polaroid company. And if you remember a 3D camera from the 80s called the Nimslo, they were the manufacturer for that camera as well. and frankly, I suspect, that the head of Timex, Fred, whose last name escapes me now, was like, yeah, we got to get the TV. We'll take this other crap that you're making as well, and we'll sell that and see how that goes. And they never got the TV.
TV did not sell very well. It sold, but it didn't sell very well.
It wasn't right. It went right. It was nobody's. Sinclair came out with that sort of pocket version, which was big, right, and with a tiny little screen.
That was the Microvision that did sell in the U.S. There's an ad with, who's the Steelers quarterback?
Bradshaw.
Yeah. Bradshaw did an ad on the Microvision.
Oh wow. Okay.
That was a long CRT. It was long and had a little thing.
Yeah. But the bent CRT, that was going to be the thing. You know.
In fact, I got one. If you want me to go get it.
Oh, I'd love to see it. Yeah. And so that would have, we were all convinced, TVs, that's the next thing. TVs you carry around with you,
Yeah. Well, I have one of
these computer things. Nobody wants those computer things.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to take a computer with them in their pocket.
Well, and I have one of the Sinclair ones and a Watchman, and I'll tell you, the Watchman actually was great. I used to carry that around and hook my Apple II up to it, and you could read it. So, because it had a video in, which I don't think the Sinclair had.
Right. So that you actually reminded me of something else. Timex was at least aware of the idea of a smartwatch back in 1982. And one of the graphic designers, that's very cool. Tim, you want to talk about that?
Well, the oddest thing is, I think you see it here, this little slit right here.
Yeah.
That's where the battery goes.
The battery, yes.
I think they use, so you mentioned Polaroid. Didn't the Polaroid cameras use a flat, long, a square flat battery?
Yep.
That's one in here. And I think those were known for battery bloat. So they would blow it up.
Mm.
It has two controls in the front. It does have a little aerial, of course. It does extend out or not? Yes, it does. Okay. What you're seeing on the screen here is, so the electrons would come along here, make a turn and hit and go towards me. So they would hit the surface. So on a normal TV, you're looking at a normal CRT, you're looking at the opposite side where the electrons are hitting. Here you're looking at the side where the electrons are hitting. So they'd have to turn the brightness up too much because you're seeing the side that's being lit by the electrons. I'm pretty sure it's black and white only.
Yeah.
It's got the typical black and red Sinclair logo on it. Let's see who else is there. The screen's not very big. It's got on and off and a tuner. The tuner has a little gauge right here to tell you where the channels are, but it doesn't actually have, it just has marks. So I got this, a gentleman in the UK owed me some money. So I said, hey, don't send me money, buy me some Sinclair stuff I don't have. And this is one of them.
That's
I
awesome.
think it's a little bit glared. I'll put an angle.
That's hilarious.
It takes an AC adapter on the side. I'm not sure what the voltage is, but the problem is no one's doing broadcasts anywhere. So there's no TV stations to pick up. So I'm like, why even try and use it? Technically, I could hook up something to it because it is, you know, I could do something with some people have done ZX81s. Like I always try one of the any old home computer because they're still broadcast NTSC. So maybe I'll get some power supply and try that sometime. I think there's another hole here. It might be for audio, but I'm not too sure. It looks a little odd. It could be a headphone.
That's crazy.
So never sparked it up. Oh, there's something under here. Oh, it's a stand. So there's in the back of it, you can see there's a little, that's supposed to be the stand to hold it up.
I have no idea. I don't remember why we were so obsessed, you know, with the idea of this small TV. But then again, you know, you get on an elevator and there's 4 people watching YouTube. So,
and then stumbling at the end of the elevator.
Yeah. So Jeff, one of the designers at Timex drew, you know, sort of as a proposal, what they were calling the TS 2000 then, and it's clearly, you know, it looks like a ZX Spectrum with a, you know, sort of little sneaky cable connecting to what could be a watch. And this was in December of 82. Similar to I think, was it the Seiko that made that little TV watch thing? Yeah. Wow. This has been a crazy conversation today. Jeff, you're off. I'm going to turn you back.
Jeff's on mute.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, we all remember the Dick Tracy watch.
That's right.
And
right.
wanting to carry a phone or a TV on your wrist. So yeah.
Yeah, the only thing missing from, you know, the Apple Watch or the equivalents now today is the little pull-out antenna.
I was also thinking, anybody here remember Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy that came out in the early 80s as a 6 series BBC show?
I've got that on VHS still.
I think when they did the book and they actually had a display, I always wondered if they actually were using this initially. You know, when they showed it with a mock-up of the Hitchhiker's Guide, it had a TV display. And it looked like it was real. I wonder if they just built something around this.
Yeah, no, they were way ahead of the game in CGI, and a lot of that, most of that was just done with what we would now call CGI. Yeah,
right. But that's when you show the graphics on full screen. When you actually showed them holding the book and pushing buttons, they actually had a real screen to it. So I always wonder if it was one of these Sinclair TVs, because it would fit. Just build a little mock-up around it with some buttons and throw a cable in to do your video feed.
Yeah.
I think it was color, but I can't tell you for sure.
Oh yeah, this is only this. I think it's only it's only
black
and white.
No, there's only black and white.
That.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
Sony was the same way, but
it was like if you ever hear one of the Pet Shop Boys songs, there's a beep in it. I'm like, God, I swear that sounds just like a QL beep.
It's funny how we recognize those things. That's awesome. Hey, Rick. Wonder if Rick can hear us. How are you doing over there, Rick?
Hopefully it's not too late for him.
He's looking around.
He's looking around. He heard us. Rick?
He's not talking.
He's not. Okay.
Uh,
Larry, how are you doing?
Timothy, just a clarification. I just found the manual for the TV80, which is the model of the Sinclair TV.
Yep.
That socket you have, the black socket in the bottom, is actually the power socket. The silver socket is the headphone out.
Headphone out.
Earphone
interesting.
socket.
Okay, so the
I'll
silver headphone.
I'll place the
You're
site. I found information in the chat.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I'm looking at this as there's looks like air holes right here. They're actually the speak. I can see the PZO, whatever small little speaker. behind
Speaker.
Yeah.
it. Yeah, there's a little. So one of these
Yeah, and
days I'll try it. I don't know.
I used to collect all those Polaroid batteries. They were really, because the film pack only used maybe a half of the power in there, and they were good for powering. There were a couple other, I can't remember any off the hand, but there were other devices that used those batteries.
But and Jeff, I think it was Forrest Mims that did at least one article in Popular Electronics about using those batteries for other things.
Yeah, they had a pretty good power density in there that you could drive some heavy motors.
Yeah,
which the cameras had. So
yeah, they were nice batteries for
I think I got a half a dozen sitting in my closet. I should see if they still have any juice left in them.
Well, you should probably take them to the recycling center at this point.
Perhaps. They'd probably look at it and go, what the hell is this?
Yes, this is
it's like the guys that go to the Genius Bar at Apple with their Apple IIs and want them to fix it, and the guys look at them like, what?
Yeah. I remember I bought Metacomco Pascal. So a junior year of college, I bought a QL, I bought Metacomco Pascal, bought extra memory to run it. And I found a bug, and I contacted Metacomco, who actually had an office in Scotts Valley right next to Borland or close to them. And they go, yeah, I think we've got a QL around here. Let me see if I can spark it up and see what's going on. But they never did really fix the bug. But they did have an office here. They were kind of surprised that someone from had a QL was pinging them about it.
Oh, that's funny. Speaking of which, there's a QL auction on eBay either now or the past couple days that had a dongle for Metacomco C. But the person who's listing it is like, this comes with Metacomco C. It's like, no, that's not. It can't be. It's probably just the dongle.
So Metacomco always had ROM cartridges for all the languages.
Oh,
so there's
really?
one for Pascal.
Yeah.
And then there's now a bin file because someone basically read the one. I believe someone read the C one, and so Metacomco C is available.
That's the actual language then, huh?
Yeah. So
oh my gosh.
Done Pascal. Actually, I don't think the Pascal one's available. I think the C one. What was the other one they did? No, might have been Metacomco. Okay. No. It was another one, Proforma had a Pascal. The Pascals on the QL aren't really very good. They have limitations. You can't open additional windows. You can open additional windows, but only for output, not for input. So, and then the computer one's got computer one Pascal is only for QDOS. I think most of them are only for QDOS, also not SMSQE.
Okay.
So I think Metacomco C, in fact, I was going to play with it recently. The manual, when someone photocopied the manual, put it as a PDF, page 1 and page 2 are at separate ends of the PDF. So all your odd pages are first, then all your even pages are next. So you want to read from page 1 to page 2, you got to go all the way to the end of the PDF.
Oh,
There's
man.
someone working on that now to get them into the proper order and make it readable. So
is this like a couple hundred pages?
Yeah, like 100 pages or more.
Yeah.
So
It's
it-
actually
it
an easy
doesn't-
task to fix in the
Yeah,
Mac PDF viewer. I use it all the time to rearrange stuff when I scan stuff.
if there's a compiler out for the QL language, I probably played with it at one point or another.
Very
Tim?
cool.
When you use those compilers, did that on cartridge, did that give you more RAM to deal with? Or did it map into where RAM was?
So they're talking about on the QL. So
Yeah.
with Pascal, I could compile some things with Pascal with 128K, but I was doing graphics with Pascal, and that really required me to get extra memory to be able to do. I was working on a program for my independent study course on cellular automata that required graphics. So I had to buy a 512 expander RAM, which prevented me from buying a floppy interface or drives because I ran out of money. But that did work. In fact, I remember taking the QL with the QL monitor and the expander RAM into the college to demo it to my professor.
That's awesome.
It's horrible to be as old as we are and remember when memory costs that much, and now 512K is like $2 at DigiKey.
Yes.
But the college I went to, Pascal was the primary language, so
Yeah.
getting it on the QL was kind of neat.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Well, Jeff Mazur, thank you for finding us and joining us. It was wonderful hearing from you. This is to me, this is the dream of what I started years ago with my website, in terms of just trying to document all this stuff for, folks like us. And to be truthful, I thought that there was going to be like 4 other people, who were interested in all of this kind of stuff. And I never expected Stuart to come out of the woodwork. And I knew Tim because I saw Tim's name in the magazines that I indexed. I knew of you, Jeff, because of your book, and to have this, that we can do this every 2 weeks or so, and have new people come and talk to us is just fantastic. So our next meeting is Monday. Let me just double check. Monday the 2nd at 9 p.m. Eastern, whatever version of time we're in at that time, it will be at 9 p.m. And I'll be sure to send out a reminder about that, and I will get this recording uploaded to YouTube this week. This has just been fantastic. This is I love doing this. I love hearing from you guys. I love seeing the projects. Ingo, that your work is fantastic. You taught me something today, and even that's great. I knew about. I kind of stumbled across that keyboard thing that you had you talked about, but I didn't know about the whole that you could go SVG and then laser cutter. So that's fantastic. Now I'm going to spend a week putzing around with that.
Down the rabbit hole.
Yes, exactly. Down that rabbit hole. Exactly. And Ricardo, thank you for joining us. Thank you, everybody.
Welcome.
Thank you, everybody.
Just wanted to show Tim something I have for the QL. I have a gold card,
Yes.
Miracle gold card.
Yep, I had one too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
This
awesome.
one is full of wires. Not sure if the PCB is okay, but it works. They're very rare now. Some appear on eBay in England from time to time. I managed to get this one's fairly good price.
There is a clone of the gold card, but unfortunately it comes from Russia. So
Yeah, I
none
know.
available at the moment.
And right now, importing anything into the EU, it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Sorry to say.
Yes. Yes.
I have to pay VAT. I have to go to customs, take care of it, pay a fee, and it's very painful.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All
We'll
right,
see
Thank you, David.
see you in a bit,
Thank you,
in a
Dave.
week or so.
Bye.
And I'll see you on email.